Oh, Luna's here. Well, this is awkward. We didn't think you'd actually show up this weekend. The woman standing in my kitchen, my mountain lodge kitchen, held a wine glass like she owned the place. Behind her, 3 more people I'd never met sat around my dining table, mid-laugh, mid-meal. My sister Celeste stood by the stove, frozen, guilt flashing across her face, for only a second before she smoothed it away. I set my overnight bag down slowly. The weight of it suddenly felt ridiculous. I'd driven 3 hours for this. For silence. For space. For a weekend alone in the mountains. The place I'd bought specifically to escape. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure why I was apologizing. I didn't realize anyone would be here. The woman with the wine glass, mid-50s, blonde highlights, expensive athleisure, smiled the way you smile at someone who's interrupted something important. "I'm Diane, Celeste's mother-in-law. These are the Harringtons." She gestured vaguely at the table. "We've been coming up here for months now. Celeste is such a dear for sharing." Sharing. The word landed wrong. I looked at Celeste, waiting for her to correct this, to explain, to say something that would make the wrongness go away. But she just tucked her hair behind her ear and gave me that practiced smile, the one she'd perfected somewhere around age 12. "Luna, I was going to text you," she said, her voice light, casual. "But you're so bad at checking your phone." I checked my phone constantly. She knew that. "I didn't know you'd be here this weekend," I said, keeping my voice even. "Well, we didn't think you'd mind," Diane interjected, setting her glass down with a soft clink. "Celeste said you're never here anyway. Shame to let a beautiful place like this go to waste." Go to waste. As if my absence made it communal property. "I'm Luna Williams. I'm 34. I work as an environmental consultant, which means I spend most of my time convincing corporations to care about the planet. It's exhausting work. That's why I bought this lodge 3 years ago, with my own money, my own savings, after a promotion I'd worked a decade to earn. I never told my family how much I paid for it. I never told them it was mine alone. Maybe that was my first mistake. I gestured toward the hallway. "I'll stay out of your way." "Oh, don't be silly," Diane said, but she didn't move from the counter. "There's plenty of room. We took the master. Hope you don't mind. But the guest room's all yours." The guest room. In my house. I looked at Celeste one more time. She was stirring something on the stove, her back to me now, and I realized she wasn't going to say anything. She wasn't going to explain or defend, or even acknowledge that this was strange. "Right," I said quietly. The guest room. I picked up my bag and walked down the hallway, past family photos I'd hung myself, past the bookshelf I'd assembled alone, one Sunday afternoon, past the window seat, where I'd spent countless mornings watching the sunrise over the ridge. The guest room door was open. Someone's suitcase sat on the bed, not mine. I moved it to the floor, gently, and sat down on the edge of the mattress. Through the walls, I could hear them laughing. The sound was warm, easy, familiar. The sound of people who belonged. I pulled out my phone. No missed texts from Celeste. No warning, no heads up. Just me, sitting in the guest room of my own house, trying to figure out how I'd become a visitor in my own life. I looked at my sister, waiting for her to say something, anything, that would make this make sense. But Celeste just smiled, that practiced smile, and said, "You understand, right? Family helps family," except I wasn't the family she meant. I didn't unpack. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, in my own house, and stared at the wall for a long time. Downstairs the dinner party continued without me. Someone turned on music. Jazz, I think. I'd never played jazz in this house. The guest room was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe it just felt that way now, that I was the guest. I thought about going back downstairs, about asserting myself, about saying something definitive and clear. But the thought exhausted me, before I could even stand up. That's the thing about being the responsible one, the capable one, the one who always has it figured out. People stop checking if you need anything, they just assume you're fine. I've been assuming I was fine for 34 years. My parents never meant to play favorites. That's what I used to tell myself. Celeste was just needier, more expressive, the kind of daughter who called crying at midnight, who showed up at their door with broken hearts and broken cars and broken dreams. I was the other kind, the kind who got a full scholarship and moved out at 18, and never asked for gas money, or rent, or help with anything. "You're so strong," my mother used to say, like it was a compliment. "You don't need us like she does." So they gave Celeste what she needed, and they gave me space. I learned early that space was just a kind word for absence. When I graduated college, summa cum laude, double major, my parents missed the ceremony. Celeste needed help moving out of her apartment after a bad breakup. It was a 3-hour drive, they said. They'd make it up to me. They never did. When I bought this lodge, I called my mother, excited, wanting to share the news. She said, "That's wonderful, honey," in that distracted voice that meant she was doing something else. Then she asked if I could loan Celeste money for a security deposit. I said yes. I always said yes. The money was never paid back. I never asked for it. I stood up and walked to the window. The mountains were dark against the darkening sky, the ridgeline sharp and certain. I bought this place because of that view, because standing here made me feel like I could breathe. Tonight I felt like I was suffocating. Downstairs someone laughed, a bright, genuine sound. I wondered what the joke was. I wondered if Celeste had told them I was the joke. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Celeste mentioned you're at the lodge. So glad you two are spending time together." I stared at the message. Celeste hadn't mentioned the Harringtons. She hadn't mentioned that she'd been giving strangers access to my property for months. She just framed it as sisterly bonding. And my mother had believed her, because Celeste was always better at the narrative. I didn't respond. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and lay back on the bed. The ceiling had a small crack in the corner. I'd never noticed it before. I wondered how long it had been there. I wondered what else I'd missed while I was busy being fine. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, in my own house, and realized I'd spent 34 years making myself small so others could feel big. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you're not alone. Sometimes the people who should see us the most are the ones who look right through us. This is my story. I stayed for dinner. I don't know why. Maybe because leaving felt like admitting defeat. Maybe because some part of me still believed this could be salvaged, explained, laughed off as a misunderstanding. Diane set an extra place at the table without asking where I wanted to sit. I ended up at the corner, next to Robert Harrington, Diane's husband, a man with silver hair and an easy smile who talked about golf like it was a religion. "Celeste tells us you travel a lot for work," he said, cutting into his steak. My steak, from my freezer. "Sometimes," I said. "Must be nice," Diane added from across the table. "All that freedom, no kids, no ties, just you and the open road." She said it like it was a compliment. It felt like pity. "I like my work," I said quietly. "Oh, I'm sure," Diane replied, smiling. "But don't you ever want to settle down, find someone, start a family?" Celeste jumped in before I could answer. "Luna's married to her career. Always has been." The way she said it, light, teasing, affectionate, made it impossible to argue. If I corrected her, I'd sound defensive. If I stayed quiet, I'd confirm it. I stayed quiet. The conversation moved on. They talked about their son, Celeste's husband, Marcus, who was away on business. They talked about their grandchildren, their book club, their plans to renovate their kitchen. I sat at the edge of their circle, nodding occasionally, saying nothing. At one point, Diane looked around the room and sighed. "This place really is special. We're so grateful. Celeste lets us use it, lets them, as if it were hers to give." I looked at my sister. She was smiling, nodding, playing the gracious hostess in my home. "It's not," I started, but Celeste cut me off. "Luna's always been generous," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Haven't you?" Her grip was firm, her smile was bright, and her eyes were warning me not to make a scene. So I didn't. The next morning, I found Celeste's mother-in-law rearranging my bookshelves. "Just tidying up," she said, not even looking at me. That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. I spent the rest of the weekend watching, not confronting, not arguing, just observing. It started small, little things I might have missed if I hadn't been paying attention, but once I started looking, really looking, the evidence was everywhere. Diane had rearranged more than the bookshelves. The throw pillows on the couch were different, cream instead of the charcoal gray I'd chosen. They were expensive too, the kind with silk trim and hand-stitched details. Someone had taken time selecting them. Someone had decided my choices weren't good enough. The kitchen towels were new, monogrammated with an H. I hadn't bought. They hung perfectly aligned on the oven handle, crisp and white, and foreign. I opened the drawer where I kept my old towels, the soft worn ones I'd had for years, and found them shoved in the back, replaced by these pristine imposters. In the bathroom, someone had replaced my soap with lavender-scented bars. that made my skin itch. My unscented, hypoallergenic soap, the only kind I could use without breaking out, was gone. In its place sat these purple rectangles, wrapped in decorative paper, arranged in a little wicker basket I'd never seen before. There was even a small sign propped against the mirror: relax, breathe, unwind, as if I needed instructions on how to exist in my own bathroom. I opened the medicine cabinet. My toiletries had been moved to the bottom shelf. The top shelves now held unfamiliar bottles, expensive face creams, prescription medications with Robert Harrington's name on them, an electric toothbrush still in its charging station. They'd colonized my space, item by item, assumption by assumption. Small changes, easy to miss, but they added up to something bigger. This place was being rewritten without my permission. I walked through each room with fresh eyes, cataloging the alterations. In the living room, someone had moved my grandmother's quilt from the back of the couch and replaced it with a store-bought throw blanket. I found the quilt folded in a closet, tucked away like it didn't matter, like 90 years of family history could be hidden to make room for something more aesthetically pleasing. The artwork on the walls had been adjusted. My photographs, landscapes I'd taken myself, moments I'd captured during hikes, had been shifted to less prominent positions. In their place hung generic prints of mountain scenes, the kind you buy at home goods stores. Someone had decided my memories weren't decorative enough. In the kitchen, I opened cabinets and found them reorganized according to someone else's logic. My coffee mugs were in a different cupboard. My spices were alphabetized, which sounds nice, except I'd had them arranged by frequency of use. Now I'd have to hunt for the paprika I used weekly, while the turmeric I touched twice a year sat in prime position. The refrigerator held food I hadn't bought: expensive cheeses, organic vegetables, a bottle of white wine with a French label. Someone had made themselves at home in the most literal sense possible. I found Celeste in the kitchen that afternoon, making coffee in my French press. She was humming, actually humming, like this was the most normal thing in the world, like she hadn't just spent 6 months systematically erasing me from my own property. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She looked up, startled. The humming stopped. "What? The Harringtons. How long have you been letting them come here?" She set the press down slowly, carefully, buying herself time to formulate an answer. "I don't know. A few months." "How many months?" "Luna, why does it matter?" "Because it's my house." She laughed, not meanly, but like I'd said something absurd, like I'd just claimed the sky was green, or that water flowed uphill. "I know it's your house. I'm not saying it isn't. I just thought, you're never here anyway, and they love it. It makes them happy." The justification was so casual, so effortless, as if my absence negated my ownership, as if happiness, their happiness, trumped my rights. "Did you ask me?" "I didn't think I needed to." The words hung in the air between us. I didn't think I needed to. 5 words that explained everything. 5 words that revealed exactly how little my boundaries mattered to her. "You didn't think you needed to ask permission to give strangers keys to my house." "They're not strangers," she said, her voice sharpening. Her posture changed too. Shoulders back, chin up, defensive now. "They're family, my family. And you're acting like I committed some crime." "I'm acting like someone who just found out her private property has been used without her knowledge for half a year." Celeste crossed her arms. The gesture was so familiar. She'd been doing it since we were kids, whenever she was cornered, whenever she knew she was wrong but refused to admit it. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being clear." "No," she said, stepping closer, close enough that I could smell the coffee on her breath, see the flash of anger in her eyes. "You're being selfish. You have this huge place, and you're here maybe twice a year. We thought you'd be happy to share. We thought you'd want to help." There it was again, that word, we, as if my absence had turned my ownership into a democracy, as if she and the Harringtons had formed some kind of collective that could vote on how to use my property. "I didn't buy this place to share it," I said quietly. "I bought it to have space." Space from what? From you, I thought. From all of you. From the constant demands and expectations and assumptions that I'll always say yes, always accommodate, always make myself smaller, so everyone else can be comfortable. But I didn't say it. I just turned and walked outside. The air was cold, sharp, clean. I stood on the porch and looked out at the mountains, trying to remember why I'd loved this view, trying to remember what peace felt like before it had been invaded, colonized, rewritten. The mountains hadn't changed. They were still there, solid and ancient, and indifferent to human drama, but somehow they felt different now, like they were watching me, waiting to see what I'd do, waiting to see if I'd fight for this place,
or let it slip away like I'd let so many other things slip away over the years. Inside, I heard Celeste on the phone. Her voice was low, but I caught fragments through the open window. She's being ridiculous. I don't know. She's upset. No, I think she'll get over it. I think she'll get over it. The confidence in those words, the certainty, the lifetime of evidence that Luna always gets over it, always backs down, always chooses peace over confrontation. I pulled out my phone and opened the Photos app, scrolled back 6 months. There a picture Celeste had posted on Instagram, the lodge in the background, golden in late afternoon light. The caption, family retreat, grateful for these moments. I scrolled further, another post, another, the Harringtons in my living room, toasting with champagne glasses, Diane on my porch, wrapped in my grandmother's quilt, Robert holding a beer by my fire pit, grinning at the camera, all tagged as family cabin, all implying shared ownership, all erasing me completely. The comments were telling too, friends congratulating Celeste on having such a beautiful family space, people asking if they could visit sometime, someone even asking if she rented it out, and Celeste's responses, it's our little sanctuary, we're so lucky to have this place, come visit anytime, are we, as if I didn't exist, as if my name wasn't on the deed, as if 3 years of mortgage payments and property taxes and maintenance costs had somehow transferred ownership to her through sheer presumption. I took screenshots. I didn't know why yet. I just knew I needed proof. Proof that this had happened. Proof that I wasn't being dramatic, or oversensitive, or unreasonable. Proof that my reality was real. That evening, Diane asked if she could store some outdoor furniture in my shed. She found me on the porch, watching the sun set behind the western ridge. She'd changed into loungewear, expensive athletic wear, that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She looked comfortable, at home. We bought it for the deck, she explained, gesturing toward the furniture in question, a teak table, and 6 matching chairs, still wrapped in plastic. But we don't have room at our place. You don't mind, do you? The question was rhetorical. Her tone suggested she'd already decided the answer. I minded all of it. I minded the furniture, and the presumption, and the way she stood on my porch like she belonged there. I minded that she felt comfortable enough to ask. I minded that she assumed I'd say yes.
But I just said, I'll think about it. She smiled like I'd said yes. Like I'll think about it was just a polite formality before inevitable agreement. Like my boundaries were suggestions rather than walls. Wonderful, she said. Robert will bring it around tomorrow morning. She walked back inside, and I heard her voice mixing with Celeste's, heard their laughter, heard the comfortable sounds of people who felt at home. I stayed outside as the temperature dropped, and the stars emerged. I stayed until I heard Diane tell Celeste, through the open kitchen window, your sister won't mind, will she? I mean, it's not like she uses it. Celeste hesitated, just for a second, then said, no, she won't mind. I left early the next morning. I didn't say goodbye. I just packed my bag, locked the guest room door behind me, and walked out to my car while everyone else was still asleep. The drive back to the city was long and silent. I didn't turn on music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, hands tight on the wheel, watching the mountains disappear in my rearview mirror. By the time I reached my apartment, it was almost noon. The place felt smaller than I remembered. Emptier. I set my bag down by the door and stood in the middle of the living room, unsure what to do next. My phone buzzed. A text from Celeste. You left early. Everything okay? I stared at the message. Everything okay? As if the problem were my mood, not her actions. I didn't respond. Another text came through an hour later. The Harringtons are asking if they can come back next weekend. I said probably yes. Let me know if that's a problem. Let me know if that's a problem. As if my permission were optional. As if my silence were consent. I set the phone down and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me. Gray buildings, busy streets, people moving through their lives with purpose and direction. I'd always liked the city, liked the anonymity of it, liked that no one expected anything from me here. But standing there, looking out at nothing in particular, I realized something. I'd built a life where no one expected anything from me, because I'd learned that my expectations didn't matter. I thought about my father, the way he used to look at me when I brought home report cards, awards, achievements. He'd nod, say good job, and then ask if I'd talked to Celeste lately. If I knew she was struggling, if I could maybe check in on her. I thought about my mother, the way she'd call me when she needed something. Advice, a loan, someone to listen. But when I called her, she was always busy, always distracted, always on her way out the door. I thought about Celeste, the way she'd show up at my apartment, unannounced, raid my fridge, borrow my clothes, and leave without saying thank you. The way she'd call me at midnight, crying about her latest crisis, and then not answer when I called back the next day to check in. I thought about all the times I'd said yes, when I meant no, all the times I'd smiled, when I wanted to scream, all the times I'd convinced myself that being low maintenance was the same as being loved. I sat down on the couch, my hands were shaking. I'd spent 34 years being the easy daughter, the one who didn't need anything, the one who could handle it, the one who made space for everyone else, because she didn't take up much room herself, and in return, I'd gotten space. So much space, I'd disappeared. That week, Celeste texted 3 more times. Can the Harringtons store some things in the shed? Diane wants to know if we can host their anniversary party at the lodge next month. You're being really quiet. Is something wrong? I didn't answer any of them. On Thursday, my mother called. Luna, honey, Celeste says you're upset about something. I closed my eyes. Did she tell you what happened? She said there was some confusion about the lodge, but I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. You know how you can be sometimes. A little too sensitive about things. A little too sensitive about strangers living in my house without permission. Mom, did Celeste tell you she's been giving her in-laws keys to my property for 6 months? A pause. Well, it's family, Luna. I'm sure she thought you wouldn't mind. It's not family, it's my house, that I bought, with my money. I know that, sweetheart, but you're never there, and Celeste is just trying to be generous. You should be happy she's building relationships with Marcus's family. I should be happy, I should be grateful, I should be fine with it. I have to go, I said. Luna, don't be like this. You're going to make Celeste feel terrible. I hung up. I sat alone in my apartment and had a quiet breakdown. No tears, no yelling, just a slow, exhausted collapse into the realization that I'd been accommodating my own erasure for decades. I looked at my phone. 17 unread messages from Celeste. Not one apology, just logistics. Requests, assumptions. I turned the phone face down and made a decision. The call came on a Tuesday. Miss Williams, this is Tom Bradley, your property manager. I'd hired Tom 6 months ago to handle basic maintenance at the lodge, snow removal, gutter cleaning, things I couldn't do from 3 hours away. Hi Tom, is everything okay? That's what I'm calling about. I got a request this morning from someone named Celeste Williams asking for duplicate keys. She said it was for extended family access. I wanted to check with you before I made copies. My stomach dropped. She asked for duplicate keys. Yeah, said her in-laws needed their own set, so they wouldn't have to coordinate with her every time. I told her I'd need your approval first. Tom, I didn't authorize that. I figured, that's why I called. I sat down slowly. How many times has Celeste requested access? This is the first time she's asked for keys. But I've seen her up there pretty regularly, her and some other folks. I assumed you knew. I didn't. A pause. You want me to change the locks? Not yet, but don't make any copies. And don't give keys to anyone without my direct approval. Got it. Sorry for the confusion. It's not your fault. I hung up and stared at the wall. Celeste had tried to formalize it. She'd tried to make it official, permanent. She'd tried to turn my property into her family's vacation home, without ever asking if that was okay. I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, I was just about to text you. Did Tom reach out? I figured it would be easier if you asked for duplicate keys to my house. Silence. Luna, it's not like that. Then what's it like? I just thought, the Harringtons are coming up more often, and it's a hassle to coordinate schedules every time. If they had their own keys, it would be simpler. Simpler? For who? For everyone. For you too. You wouldn't have to worry about it. I'm not worried about it. Celeste, I'm worried that you're trying to give permanent access to my private property, without asking me. Why are you being so selfish about this? The word hit like a slap. Selfish. Yes, selfish. You have this huge place, and you're never there. We thought you'd be happy to share. We thought you'd want to help family. They're not my family. They're my family, and I'm your sister. Doesn't that count for something? It should, but you've never treated it like it does. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've been using my house for 6 months without permission. It means you've been posting pictures online, implying it's a shared property. It means you just tried to get duplicate keys made behind my back, and now you're calling me selfish for having a problem with it. You're twisting this. I'm stating facts. You're being cold. I'm being clear. Mom and Dad are going to be so disappointed in you. There it was. The threat. The guilt. The reminder that my boundaries would be framed as cruelty. Then I guess they'll be disappointed. I said quietly, Luna, this conversation is over. Celeste, the lodge is my property. I decide who has access. And right now, that's just me. You're really going to do this. You're really going to cut us off over a house. I'm not cutting you off. I'm setting a boundary. If you can't respect that, then we have a bigger problem. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, fine, be that way, and she hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, phone still in my hand, and waited for the guilt to come. The urge to call back, to apologize, to smooth things over. It didn't come. For the first time in my life, I felt clear. I didn't call back. I didn't apologize. For the first time in my life, I let the silence sit, and in that silence, something shifted. I spent the next 2 days researching property law, trespassing statutes, access rights. The apartment became my war room. Laptop open, on the coffee table, legal documents spread across the couch, sticky notes, covering my walls with questions I needed answered. I made lists, timelines, evidence logs. Each hour that passed, I felt less like a victim, and more like someone building a case. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A case. Not a family dispute, not a misunderstanding, a clear violation of property rights that needed to be addressed with facts, not feelings. I started with the basics. What constitutes trespassing? What are my rights as a sole property owner? Can family members claim any legal access to private property without explicit permission? The answers came slowly, buried in legal jargon and statute references, but they all pointed in the same direction. My direction. On the second day, I called an old friend from law school, who now practiced real estate law, Rachel Chen. We'd studied together, pulled all-nighters before the bar exam, celebrated when we both passed. She'd gone into property law. I'd gone into environmental consulting. We hadn't talked in months, but when I explained what was happening, she cleared her afternoon. So let me get this straight, she said, her voice sharp, with the kind of focus I remembered from our study sessions. Your sister has been giving people access to your property, without permission, and now she's trying to get permanent keys made. Yes, the word came out steady, but my hands were shaking. Saying it out loud to someone outside, the situation made it real, in a way it hadn't been before. And you're the sole owner, no co-signers, no shared deed, just me. I looked at the property deed on my lap, as I said it, tracing my finger over my name, Luna Marie Williams. No one else, no fine print, no asterisks. Rachel was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her typing. Then it's simple. You have every legal right to revoke access, change locks, and enforce trespassing, if they show up without permission. You don't even need a reason. It's your property. Simple. She said it like it was obvious. Like there was no moral gray area. Like I wasn't supposed to feel guilty about it. What if they claim some kind of implied permission? I asked, thinking about all the times I'd stayed silent, all the times I hadn't said no explicitly, all the times my absence had been interpreted as agreement. Did you ever give written or verbal consent? No. I was sure of that. I'd never said yes. I'd never said they could use it. I'd just not known they were. Then there's no implied permission. Silence isn't consent, Luna, especially not for something like this. Her voice softened. Look, I know this is family. I know it's complicated. But legally, you're completely in the right. And honestly, morally too. You don't owe anyone access to your private property, just because you're related to them. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't realized was there, pulling tight for days, suddenly releasing. Thank you. Anytime. And Luna, don't let them guilt you. You're not doing anything wrong. She paused. Actually, you know what? You're doing something right. You're standing up for yourself. That's not something everyone can do, especially with family. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment for a long time, just breathing. The validation felt strange, foreign, like putting on glasses for the first time, and realizing the world had edges you'd never seen before. I pulled up Celeste's social media again. This time, I wasn't just scrolling in hurt confusion. I was documenting. The posts were still there. The Harringtons in my living room. Diane's arm draped over the back of my couch, like she'd chosen it herself. Diane on my porch,
coffee mug in hand, watching the sunrise. I'd bought the property to see Robert by my fire pit, beer raised in a toast, surrounded by people I didn't know, all tagged as family retreat, all framed as if the lodge were communal space, all implying a shared ownership that had never existed. I went back months, found posts I'd missed the first time. Diane rearranging my bookshelves, captioned making this place feel like home. Robert installing a new grill, tagged upgrade time at the cabin. Celeste in my kitchen, making breakfast for a crowd. Writing so grateful for family spaces where we can all gather. Family spaces, as if my money, my mortgage, my name on the deed meant nothing. I took more screenshots, methodically, chronologically, each one dated and saved. I created a folder on my desktop, labeled documentation, and organized everything inside. Photos, text messages, the email from my property manager about the key request, Celeste's posts, the Harrington's comments, a timeline of when I discovered the unauthorized use versus how long it had actually been happening. I worked like I was preparing for trial, because in a way, I was not a legal trial, a family one, and I knew, that when I finally took action, I'd need proof, not because I doubted myself, but because they would doubt me. They'd reframe it, twist it, make it about my character, instead of their actions. So I built my case carefully, thoroughly, with the same attention to detail I brought to my environmental reports at work. Then I looked at the property deed again, pulled it up on my computer screen, zoomed in on the ownership section. My name, Luna Marie Williams. No one else's, not Luna Williams and family, not Luna Williams with shared access, just my name, singular, definitive, legally binding. I'd forgotten what it felt like to take up space, to have something that was fully, completely, undeniably mine, not shared, not borrowed, not given away piece by piece, until nothing was left. I printed the deed, held it in my hands, read every word. This was mine. I'd earned it, saved for it, chose it, bought it, and no one, not my sister, not her in-laws, not my parents, not anyone, had the right to take that away from me. I stared at the property deed with my name, only my printed in bold. I'd forgotten what it felt like to take up space. If you've ever been made to feel selfish for protecting what's yours, keep watching. Sometimes reclaiming your peace means disappointing people who never valued it. That night, I drafted an email to my family. I sat at my kitchen table, with a cup of tea gone cold, and wrote it out longhand. First, the way I used to draft important papers in college. Something about the physical act of writing made the words feel more real, more permanent. It was calm, factual, clear, no accusations, no emotional appeals, just information. I explained that the lodge was my private property, purchased solely by me, with my name alone on the deed. I explained that I'd discovered unauthorized use, spanning 6 months. I explained that I was revoking all access effective immediately. I explained that anyone who entered the property, without my explicit written permission, would be considered trespassing. I didn't apologize. I didn't soften it. I didn't leave room for negotiation. When I typed it up, I read it 3 times, checked for tone, for clarity, for any sentence that could be misinterpreted or used against me. I edited it twice, cut unnecessary words, added specific dates, attached a copy of the property deed. Then I saved it as a draft. My finger hovered over the send button. 1 click, that's all it would take. 1 click, and everything would change. The family dynamics, the relationships, the carefully maintained fiction that we were all fine, all close, all supportive of each other. But I wasn't ready to send it yet, not because I doubted my decision, but because I knew that once I sent it, there would be fallout, immediate, intense, unavoidable, and I needed to be prepared. I needed to be ready for my mother's tears, my father's disappointment, Celeste's rage, the family members who would take sides without knowing the full story, the guilt trips, the accusations, the reframing of my boundaries as cruelty. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the city lights below. First, I needed to change the locks. I drove back to the lodge on a Wednesday, midweek, unannounced. I'd taken the day off work and left before sunrise, arriving at the property by 9 in the morning. The driveway was empty. The lodge was quiet. I unlocked the door with my key, the one I'd never given to anyone else, and stepped inside. It smelled different, not bad, just not mine. Lavender and vanilla, instead of cedar and pine. I walked through slowly. The living room had been rearranged. The couch faced the window, now instead of the fireplace. The coffee table had been replaced with something lower, more modern. In the kitchen, the cabinets had been reorganized. My mugs were in a different cupboard. My spices were alphabetized. Small changes, thoughtful changes, the kind of changes you make when you think you're improving something, the kind of changes you make when you think it's yours. I went upstairs. The master bedroom, my bedroom, had new sheets, cream-colored, high thread count, expensive. The closet had clothes in it that weren't mine. A man's jacket, a woman's scarf, Diane's reading glasses on the nightstand. They'd moved in, not literally, not permanently, but enough. I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith. How soon can you get here? I've got an opening this afternoon. Around 2, I'll take it. While I waited, I walked through the house with a notepad, documenting everything, every moved item, every addition, every trace of occupation. In the shed I found outdoor furniture I hadn't bought, a grill I hadn't ordered, gardening tools I didn't recognize. In the garage, there were bikes, 4 of them, none of them mine. I took photos of everything. At 2 o'clock, the locksmith arrived, a man in his 50s, with kind eyes and efficient hands. You want me to change all the exterior locks? Every single one. You got it. It took him 90 minutes. New deadbolts, new handles, new keys. When he finished, he handed me the only copies. You want me to dispose of the old locks? Please. After he left, I reset the security system, changed the access code, updated the Wi-Fi password, enabled notifications for any entry or exit. Then I went through the house, room by room, and removed everything that wasn't mine. The Harringtons' clothes, their toiletries, their books and magazines, and half-empty wine bottles. I packed it all carefully into boxes, labeled them, and stacked them by the front door.
It took hours. By the time I finished, the sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and orange and deep purple. I stood on the porch, looking out at the view I'd bought, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. I went back inside and wrote a note. Simple, clear, no emotion. The lodge is my private property. All previous access is revoked. Please collect your belongings by Friday. Luna, I left it on top of the boxes. Then I sat in my living room, my actual living room, arranged the way I wanted it, and poured myself a glass of wine. My phone was off. The door was locked. The house was mine again. For the first time in 6 months, I was home. Celeste's text came through at 9 p.m. What the hell is wrong with you? Then another, mom's calling you. You better answer. I turned off my phone and poured another cup of tea. I stayed at the lodge for 3 days, alone, undisturbed. I didn't check my phone. I didn't read emails. I just existed in my space, reclaiming it inch by inch. I repainted the accent wall in the living room. The Harringtons had changed it to beige. I changed it back to the deep forest green I'd chosen originally. I rearranged the furniture, put the couch back where it belonged, moved the coffee table to its original spot. I went through the kitchen, reorganizing everything the way I liked it. My mugs in the cupboard by the coffee maker, my spices in the order I used them. Small acts, methodical acts, but each one felt like taking back territory. On the 3rd day, I turned my phone back on. 43 messages, 12 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I listened to the voicemails first. My mother, Luna, please call me back. Celeste is very upset. I don't understand what's going on, but we need to talk about this. My father, your mother tells me you've changed the locks at the lodge. That seems extreme. Call me. Celeste, I can't believe you're doing this. You're tearing this family apart over a stupid house. I hope you're happy. I deleted all 3. Then I scrolled through the texts. Most were from Celeste, variations on the same theme. I was being unreasonable. I was being cruel. I was being selfish. A few were from my mother, pleading, confused, asking me to reconsider. One was from my father, short, direct. This isn't who you are. I stared at that one for a long time. This isn't who you are. But maybe it was. Maybe this was exactly who I was. Someone who'd finally learned to say no. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened my email and pulled up the draft I'd written days ago. I read it one more time. Then I pressed send. The email went to my parents, Celeste and Marcus. Subject line: regarding the lodge. It was calm, factual. It explained that I was the sole owner of the property, that I'd discovered unauthorized use, and that I'd revoked all access. It stated clearly that anyone who entered the property without my explicit permission would be considered trespassing. It didn't apologize. It didn't explain beyond the facts. It didn't ask for understanding. It just was. I set the phone down and went outside. The evening air was cool, crisp, perfect. I sat on the porch steps and watched the stars come out one by one, filling the sky with light. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing. I didn't look at it. I just sat there, in the quiet, in my space, and let the world spin without me for a while. 3 days later, I got a call from Diane Harrington herself. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice wasn't warm anymore. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, halfway between the city and the mountains, neutral ground, public space. I arrived early, ordered tea, and sat by the window. Diane walked in, 10 minutes later, her face tight, her movements sharp. She didn't order anything, just sat down across from me and folded her hands on the table. "I don't understand what's happening," she said. "I think you do. Celeste said you've lost your mind, that you've locked us out of the cabin for no reason. It's not a cabin, it's my house. And I didn't lock you out. I revoked access you never had permission to have." Her jaw tightened. "We've been going there for months. Celeste always made us feel welcome. Celeste doesn't own the property." "I do." She said it was a family place. She was wrong. Diane leaned back, studying me. "You're really going to do this? You're really going to take away something that's brought our family so much joy? It's not mine to give or take away. It was never yours. We've made memories there. We've celebrated birthdays, anniversaries. You're really going to erase all of that? You're welcome to make memories elsewhere." Her expression shifted. The polite mask slipped, just for a moment, and I saw what was underneath. Anger, entitlement, disbelief that I was saying no. "You know what I think," she said, her voice dropping. "I think you're jealous. Jealous of Celeste, of the fact that she has a real family. A husband, in-laws who care about her. You've spent your whole life alone, and now you're bitter about it." I took a sip of my tea, let the silence sit. "I'm not discussing my personal life with you," I said quietly. "Because you know I'm right. Because it's none of your business. You're making it our business, by taking away something we love. I'm reclaiming something that's mine. You're being cruel. I'm being clear." She leaned forward, her voice sharp. "You know what people are going to think when they hear about this. They're going to think you're petty, vindictive, the kind of person who punishes family over nothing. Then I guess they'll think that you're really not going to back down." "No." She stood up abruptly. "Fine. But don't think this is over. We'll tell people what kind of person you really are. Feel free. You're going to regret this." "I doubt it." She grabbed her purse and walked out, the door slamming behind her. I sat alone at the table, my hands steady around my teacup, and realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. That evening, Celeste posted on social media a vague emotional message about family betrayal and toxic siblings. Within an hour, I had messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all of them taking her side. I didn't respond. Not at first. I let the accusations sit, let the messages pile up, let the narrative build without me. "My cousin Jennifer, I can't believe you'd do this to Celeste. She's been through so much." "My Aunt Carol, family is supposed to support each other. This is so disappointing." "My Uncle Mike, your parents are heartbroken. I hope you're proud of yourself." I read each message carefully, noted the patterns, the assumptions, the way they all believed Celeste's version without asking for mine. Then I started compiling evidence, screenshots of Celeste's social media posts, showing the lodge tagged as family cabin, photos of the Harringtons in my home, implying shared ownership, text messages where Celeste referred to the property as ours, the property manager's email confirming Celeste had requested duplicate keys without my permission. I organized it all into a single document, clear, chronological, factual. Then I wrote a post of my own. "I recently discovered that my privately owned property was being used without my knowledge or consent for 6 months. I've reclaimed access. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-respect." I attached the documentation, the deed with my name, the timeline of unauthorized use, the evidence of Celeste's attempts to formalize access without permission. No anger, no drama, just facts. I posted it on my private social media, visible to family, but not public. Then I waited. The response was immediate. The messages from relatives stopped. A few deleted their previous comments. Some sent private apologies. I didn't know the full story. I should have asked before judging. My cousin Jennifer sent a longer message. I'm so sorry. I assumed Celeste was telling the truth. I should have known there was more to it. I didn't respond to most of them, just acknowledged the apologies with a simple thank you. My mother called that night. Luna, I saw your post. And I didn't realize. Celeste made it sound like you were just being difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm protecting what's mine. A long pause. Your father and I are embarrassed. We should have asked more questions. Yes, you should have. Can we fix this? That depends. Are you asking me to forgive Celeste? Or are you asking me to set better boundaries? Another pause. I don't know. Then we don't have anything to fix yet. I hung up gently, not angrily. Just done. 2 days later, Diane Harrington deleted all her social media posts mentioning the lodge. Celeste unfriended me, and my father sent a single text. You've made your point. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Weeks passed. The silence settled. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. Stopped waiting for the next accusation, the next guilt trip, the next attempt to make me the villain. I went back to work, back to my routine, back to my life. But something had changed, not just with my family, with me. I stopped apologizing for taking up space, stopped making myself small to make others comfortable, stopped saying yes when I meant no. At work, when my boss asked if I could take on an extra project, I said not this time. When a friend asked to borrow money, I said I'm not in a position to do that. When my mother called asking if I could drive 3 hours to help Celeste move furniture, I said no, she can hire movers. Each time I felt the old guilt rising, the old instinct to accommodate, to smooth things over, to be the easy one. But I didn't give in, and slowly the guilt faded. I learned something important during those weeks. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're clarity. They're the difference between being used and being respected. And if people can't love you with boundaries, they never loved you. They loved what you gave them. One Saturday, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Marcus, Celeste's husband. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I called him. Luna, thanks for calling back. What do you want, Marcus? I wanted to apologize. For my parents. For Celeste. For all of it. Why? Because it was wrong. I didn't know the full story until recently. My parents made it sound like the lodge was a family property. I didn't realize Celeste had been taking liberties. Taking liberties. Taking liberties is a polite way to put it. I know, and I'm sorry. I've talked to my parents. They won't bother you again. And Celeste, a pause. She's struggling. Our marriage is strained. Not because of you, because of her, because she lied to me too. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy. Not quite satisfaction, just acknowledgement. That's between you and her. I said quietly, I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did, and I respect it. Thank you. For what it's worth, I think you're braver than most people. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said, take care of yourself, Marcus. You too. I hung up and sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling something shift again. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about reclaiming myself. One Saturday morning, I found a letter in my mailbox at the lodge. No return address. Inside, a single sentence in Celeste's handwriting. I didn't know it would go this far. I folded it closed and threw it in the fire. Months later, the lodge felt like mine again. Completely, undeniably. I'd repainted the master bedroom, a soft warm gray that caught the morning light perfectly. I spent an entire weekend on it, rolling the paint carefully across walls that had witnessed so much that wasn't mine. Each stroke felt like reclaiming something I'd lost without even realizing it was gone. The color shifted throughout the day, cool and peaceful in the morning, warm and golden in the afternoon, deep and restful at night. I'd stand in the doorway sometimes, just looking at it, feeling the weight of ownership settle back into my bones. The furniture I'd chosen myself, a bed frame made of reclaimed wood from a local craftsman, bedding in shades of cream and sage, that made me feel calm the moment I walked in. No more cream-colored sheets left behind by strangers. No more reading glasses on the nightstand that weren't mine. Just my space, arranged exactly how I wanted it. I'd planted a garden out back, wild flowers and herbs, things that would grow without much maintenance. I wasn't trying to create something perfect or impressive.
I just wanted to see things grow that I'd chosen to plant. Purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, lavender and rosemary and thyme. I'd kneel in the dirt on Saturday mornings, hands deep in the soil, and feel connected to this place in a way I never had before. The garden wasn't just about the plants, it was about permanence, about putting down roots, about saying this is mine, and I'm staying. I'd installed a reading nook by the window, with a chair that faced the mountains and a small table for my tea. The chair was oversized, deep green velvet, the kind you could curl up in for hours. I'd positioned it to catch the afternoon light, that perfect golden hour, when the sun hit the peaks and turned everything amber and rose. I kept a basket of blankets nearby, a small lamp for evening reading, and a stack of books I'd been meaning to get to for years. Some mornings I'd sit there with my coffee, watching the mist burn off the valleys, and feel something close to contentment. The lodge had become a reflection of me, not the me I'd been trying to be for 35 years, accommodating, invisible, easy, but the me I actually was. Someone who liked quiet mornings and strong tea, someone who preferred deep conversations with a few people over shallow pleasantries with many, someone who needed solitude the way other people needed company. I spent weekends there now, alone mostly. Sometimes I invited friends, real friends, people who asked permission, who respected boundaries, who understood that my space was mine to share, not theirs to take. Sarah came up once a month. We'd hike in the mornings and cook elaborate dinners at night, talking about everything and nothing. My colleague David brought his husband one weekend, and we spent 2 days playing board games and drinking wine by the fire. These were people who understood that an invitation was a gift, not an entitlement. People who thanked me for having them, and left the place exactly as they'd found it. The difference was stark. These friends asked what they could bring. They offered to help with dishes. They respected my routines and my space. When I said I needed to work for a few hours, they didn't take it personally. They just read their books, or went for walks and gave me the room I needed. That's what respect looked like. I just never experienced it from family before. My relationship with my family was distant but cordial. I attended the occasional holiday dinner. I sent birthday cards. I showed up when it mattered, but I'd learned to distinguish between showing up and showing up at my own expense. I could be present without being available for exploitation. I could love people from a distance that kept me safe. Thanksgiving that year was the first test. My mother had called, hesitant, asking if I'd come. I'd said yes, but I'd driven myself, stayed in a hotel, and left right after dessert. I didn't spend the night, didn't extend the visit, didn't make myself available for the inevitable conversations about why I was still being difficult. Christmas was easier. I sent gifts. I made an appearance. I smiled in the family photos. But when my father suggested I stay through New Year's, I said no without explanation. I didn't owe anyone my time just because we shared DNA, but I didn't sacrifice my peace for their comfort anymore. My mother tried, once, to bring up the lodge situation. We were alone in the kitchen, washing dishes after Easter dinner. She'd been quiet for a while, and I could feel the question coming before she asked it. Do you think you and Celeste will ever work things out? I dried a plate slowly, carefully. That depends on whether she's willing to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry because she got caught. She's your sister. I know, but that doesn't mean I owe her access to my life when she's shown she doesn't respect it. My mother's hands stilled in the soapy water. She looked out the window at nothing in particular. I don't know how we got here. We got here because you taught her she could take whatever she wanted from me, and I'd just accept it. We got here because my boundaries were always negotiable, and hers never were. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. My mother didn't argue. She just nodded, sad but accepting. I saw tears in her eyes, but I didn't try to comfort her. That was the old me. The new me understood that her sadness wasn't my responsibility to fix. We finished the dishes in silence. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest, and I'd learned that honest discomfort was better than false peace. Celeste and I hadn't spoken since the letter. I heard through my mother that her marriage was rocky, that she'd started therapy, that she was working on herself. The updates came in small doses, always casual, always framed as if I should care more than I did. Celeste is having a hard time, my mother would say.
I'm sorry to hear that, I'd reply. And I meant it. Not because I wanted to fix it, just because I didn't wish her harm. I hoped that was true. Not for my sake. For hers. I hoped therapy would help her see the patterns she'd created, the entitlement she'd carried, the way she'd used people without realizing it. I hoped she'd learn what I'd learned, that real relationships require respect, not just convenience. But I didn't reach out, didn't offer support, didn't try to fix it. Some relationships can't survive boundaries, and that's okay. Not every connection is meant to last forever. Not every family bond is healthy just because it's family. I'd spent too many years trying to force relationships that only worked when I made myself smaller. I was done with that. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who said yes to everything. The one who made herself small. The one who believed that being needed was the same as being loved. I remembered her so clearly. The way she'd apologize for taking up space. The way she'd second-guess every boundary. The way she'd convince herself that other people's comfort mattered more than her own peace. I remembered the day I graduated college, sitting alone in the auditorium because my parents were helping Celeste move. I remembered telling myself it was fine, that I understood, that I didn't need them there. I remembered the ache in my chest, that I'd pushed down so deep, I'd almost convinced myself it wasn't real. I remembered buying this lodge, calling my mother with excitement, and hearing that distracted voice ask if I could loan Celeste money. I remembered saying yes. I remembered never being paid back. I remembered never asking. I remembered all of it, every small erasure, every quiet dismissal, every moment I'd chosen their comfort over my dignity. I didn't recognize her anymore, and I didn't miss her. One evening, I sat on my porch at the lodge, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose and deep purple. I had a book in my lap, a cup of tea on the table beside me, and nothing but silence around me. It was perfect. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. This is Diane Harrington. I wanted to reach out and say I'm sorry. I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me. I stared at the message for a long time. Read it 3 times, felt the old instinct rise, the urge to respond, to accept, to smooth things over. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, just because I didn't need it. I didn't need her apology to feel whole. I didn't need her acknowledgement to know I'd done the right thing. I already knew. I don't know if my family will ever understand why I did what I did, but I finally understand myself. And that's enough. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Thank you for listening. The mountains were quiet that evening. For the first time in years, so was I. A year later, I was hosting a small gathering at the lodge. 6 people, friends from work, friends from the city, people who'd proven over time that they knew how to respect boundaries. The evening had started hours earlier, when the first car pulled up the gravel driveway, just as the sun began its descent behind the western ridge. Sarah arrived with homemade bread, still warm from her oven. Michael brought wine, the good kind, not the cheap stuff you grab at a gas station. Emma and her partner Jordan showed up with an acoustic guitar, and stories from their recent hiking trip through Montana. And then there were the Chens, an older couple I'd met through work, who'd become unexpected friends after collaborating on a wetlands restoration project. These weren't people who'd invited themselves. They'd waited for an invitation. They'd asked what they could bring. They'd confirmed the dates weeks in advance, and actually showed up when they said they would. Simple things, basic things, things that shouldn't feel revolutionary, but somehow did. I'd spent the afternoon preparing. Not frantically, not anxiously, but with a kind of calm intentionality I'd only recently learned. I'd arranged chairs around the fire pit I'd built myself last spring, a project that took 3 weekends and left my hands blistered, but gave me something I'd never experienced before. The satisfaction of creating something with my own effort in my own space. I'd set out blankets for when the mountain air turned cold. I'd prepared a simple meal, nothing fancy, just grilled vegetables and chicken. Food that tasted better when shared outdoors, under an emerging canopy of stars. The conversation had flowed easily all evening, work stories and travel plans and debates about the best hiking trails in the region. Emma had played a few songs on the guitar, her voice soft and clear in the mountain air. The Chens had told us about their daughter's wedding next month, their faces glowing with pride. Michael had made everyone laugh with a story about a disastrous camping trip that involved a bear, a cooler, and a very expensive tent. We were sitting around the fire pit I'd built myself, laughing about something inconsequential, when my phone buzzed. I felt it vibrate in my jacket pocket. Once. Then again, I almost left it there. The firelight was warm on my face, and Sarah was in the middle of explaining why she'd accidentally joined a competitive pickleball league, and the moment felt too good to interrupt. But something made me pull it out. Some instinct. Some old habit of always being available, always checking, always making sure I hadn't missed something important. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me check. The message loaded slowly, the signal weak this far up the mountain. When the words finally appeared, I had to read them twice, to make sure I'd understood correctly. This is Diane Harrington. Celeste is pregnant. She wants family around. Can we move past this? I stared at the message. Read it twice. Time seemed to slow for a moment. The laughter around the fire continued, but it sounded distant, muffled, like I was hearing it from underwater. I looked at those words. Can we move past this? And felt a dozen different responses rise up in my throat. Move past what? Exactly. Move past 6 months of unauthorized use of my property. Move past the lies and manipulation and gaslighting. Move past the fact that Celeste had tried to formalize access to my home without my permission. Move past the social media campaign that painted me as the villain. Move past my entire family taking her side without asking for my story. Or did Diane mean something simpler? Did she mean, can we pretend none of that happened? Because it's inconvenient to remember now. The audacity was almost impressive. A year ago, this message would have sent me spiraling. I would have felt the old guilt rising, the old obligation, the old voice that said family is family, and you have to forgive, and you have to accommodate, and you have to make space for people, even when they've shown they don't respect yours. A year ago, I might have responded, might have said congratulations, might have asked questions about due dates and baby names, and whether they knew if it was a boy or a girl, might have slowly, carefully rebuilt a bridge I never burned in the first place. But I wasn't that person anymore. I deleted it without responding. The action was simple. A swipe, a tap. The message disappeared from my screen like it had never existed. Everything okay? My friend Sarah asked. She'd noticed my face change. Sarah noticed things like that. It was one of the reasons we'd become close. She paid attention. She asked questions. She listened to the answers. Yeah, I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Everything's fine. And it was. I looked around at the people gathered in my space. People who'd asked permission to be here. People who respected that this place was mine. People who understood that love wasn't about access. It was about respect. Sarah, who'd once asked if she could borrow my car, and then returned it with a full tank of gas and a thank you note. Michael, who'd invited me to his wedding and genuinely meant it when he said no pressure if I couldn't make it. Emma and Jordan, who'd stayed at the lodge once and left it cleaner than they'd found it. The Chens, who'd brought me soup when I was sick last winter without making me feel like I owed them something in return. These were people who understood that relationships were built on mutual respect, not obligation. That boundaries weren't walls, they were the foundation that made real connection possible. The fire crackled, sending sparks up into the darkening sky. Someone told a joke. I think it was Michael. Something about a lawyer and a duck, and laughter rose into the night air, genuine and warm and uncomplicated. I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the stars, feeling something I'd spent most of my life searching for. Peace. Not the peace that comes from being accommodating. Not the peace that comes from making yourself small. Not the peace that comes from saying yes when you mean no, from smiling when you want to scream, from pretending everything is fine when it's not. The peace that comes from knowing your worth, from protecting your space, from choosing yourself, even when it disappoints others. The peace that comes from understanding that you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they want it. That you don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they've decided they're ready to receive it. That you don't owe anyone a relationship just because you share DNA, or history, or memories that may have been good once, a long time ago. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Diane. I felt it vibrate against my leg. Insistent, demanding, expecting a response. For a split second, I almost checked it. Almost let curiosity win. Almost wondered what she'd said this time. What new angle she was trying. What guilt trip or manipulation or plea she'd crafted. But I didn't. I turned it off without reading it. The action felt powerful in a quiet way. Not dramatic. Not vengeful. Just final. A door closing softly but completely. Then I stood up, walked to the fire, and tossed another log on the flames. The wood caught quickly, the flames leaping higher, casting dancing shadows across the faces of my friends. The heat intensified for a moment, warm and bright and alive. The mountains stretched out around us, dark and vast and beautiful, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged in my own story, not as the supporting character who existed to make everyone else's life easier, not as the easy one who never complained, never asked for anything, never caused problems, not as the one who gave everything and asked for nothing in return, who made herself small so others could feel big, who stayed silent so others could be heard, just as me, Luna Williams, 35 years old, environmental consultant, owner of a mountain lodge, woman who'd learned, finally, that the most important boundary you can set is the one that protects your own peace. Woman who'd learned that saying no doesn't make you cruel, that protecting what's yours doesn't make you selfish, that choosing yourself doesn't make you a bad person. Woman who'd learned that sometimes the people who call you family are the ones who understand you least. And sometimes the people who become family are the ones you choose, the ones who earn their place in your life, through respect and reciprocity and genuine care. I looked at Sarah, laughing at something Jordan was saying. At Michael, pouring more wine. At Emma, tuning her guitar for another song. At the Chens, sitting close together, Mr. Chen's hand resting gently on his wife's knee. This was my family now. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by choice. And that made all the difference. They taught me I was selfish for wanting what was mine. Turns out, I was just finally learning what I deserved.